Most business owners don't think their HR is broken until somebody quits, somebody sues, or the Department of Labor sends them a nice little letter. So today I'm going to show you 5 areas where your HR is already broken, and then I'm going to help you understand what to do to address those things today in your business, tomorrow, this week, but we're not putting it off because this really matters. So if you are a business of any size, you even have one employee, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. I read a statistic this week that said 60% of businesses that experience an employee-focused lawsuit will never financially recover. That's bananas. And that speaks to, the coverage that you have, the insurance coverage, and all of those things come into play. But 60% of businesses will not financially recover after an employment lawsuit. So this stuff matters. I saw this over 20 years ago, my first experience with one of these lawsuits. We had all of our developers, software engineers, whatever you want to call them. This was an online company, and we were ahead of the trend when it came to online sales, but we had all of those individuals misclassified. So we had them listed as exempt when we should have had them listed as non-exempt. So they were paid salary and they weren't paid hourly. And an individual reported that, and we had an audit, and the audit came back and essentially said, yes, we had them classified incorrectly. And so there's a look back period. So we had to go back years, and those employees who still remained with us were able to give how many hours they thought that they had worked overtime, completely up to them. There's no audit trail for us to be able to prove this at this point. So they were able to say, here's how many hours I think I worked above and beyond 40 hours a week. And therefore, they would have gotten time and a half for those. So those employees all got back pay for all of that for years. And then we also had a pretty healthy fine. And the individuals who had left us in that look back period, we had to reach out to them and compensate them as well. This was hundreds of thousands of dollars that we obviously had not accounted for. And we learned our lesson when it came to classifications. And I would say, whether it's places that I've worked or with clients, this is an area I talk about a lot. And almost every single client or employer that I address, they just don't want to get into it. They just want to tell me why they're doing it the way that they are, and that no one's ever going to report that, or, their reasons are it's out of the goodness of their heart, and it's nicer to pay them for salary because some weeks they work less, and that's probably true. But if you get audited, no one's going to say, well, what weeks did you work under 40 hours? They're like, that's irrelevant at that point. They're only going to ask what weeks or days or time they worked above and beyond the 40 hours, because you owe them money if they're misclassified. So that's not a scare tactic. That's just something that I've seen in my world. And it is a place where employers just don't want to deal with it. And of course, the Department of Labor puts out standards to help you understand how to classify. I've got a free resource on my website that can, if you go to saltandlightadvisors.com/freebies, I've got some things on there that would help you navigate that. I'm not a labor attorney, so these are things that I've pulled from the Department of Labor. You can just go to their website as well. And there's the duties test, and then there's some exemptions of how people can qualify to be exempt. But they're very clear. And if you don't hit those and your job descriptions don't match that, you're at risk on this thing. So I want to talk about what the cost is for this. When people think like not having an HR foundation is just not that big of a deal. And this isn't just, let's say, blue collar offices. This isn't just like construction companies that don't have HR foundations. I many times see professional services organizations, like let's say engineering firms or physician practices or law firms. And those are individuals who feel pretty confident in their business acumen. And so it's not, I think people usually think like, oh, the mom and pop shops don't have HR. I see a ton of professional service organizations that are lacking in this area too. And the cost is big. It can come through turnover. It can come through culture rot. It can come through burnout. And of course, lawsuits is one of the areas, but it's damaging your business to not have your HR foundation set up. And I want to shift your mindset, because so many people picture HR as paperwork. And if I have a client reach out to me and I can tell they're just wanting to like outsource the paperwork, that ain't it. Like that's not something that I'm doing. It is really risk management and your infrastructure. It's your leadership infrastructure, how everything operates in your business is how and why you've got an HR foundation set up. So let's talk about the 5 most common signs that I see that an organization's HR is broken or maybe even non-existent. Sign 1, you are the HR department. Whether you are listening to this and you are the business owner or you are a senior leader or you are an office manager, you're the HR department and you really have no idea what that actually means. There's no documentation, no processes around the people operations side of things, and no one really owns the people decisions. That's sign number 1, that your HR is broken. Sign number 2, your employee handbook was written in 2017, or it doesn't exist at all, or you've got policies that don't actually match how you're operating as an organization. And there's so many. I was just talking to a client yesterday that was like, well, we have, people have signed off on the handbook. And I wasn't trying to be like a jerk about it, but I said, congratulations, you've met the minimum qualification. But if people don't understand how it applies to their job, how they would succeed or fail as an employee, how to utilize the benefits that they have, what the processes and procedures are, how to have an equitable environment. Why does this person get, time off for that when I don't? Or what am I supposed to wear? Or, where do I park? Just all of those things. If an employee doesn't understand, but by goodness, they have signed that handbook, I would say like, congratulations, you have just barely scraped the surface of being a subpar employer. That's just not the point. We want people to have that handbook so they understand how to operate. Sure, we're protecting the organization, but we're setting clear expectations up for employees on how to succeed and what it looks like to work here. I mean, your handbook is not just something that an attorney should sign off on. It's something that all of us, as the employer, the leadership team, the employee population can agree like, yeah, I agree with these policies. This works for me. And yes, as an employer, I can hold people accountable to those, but it is really just your operating instructions on how to be an employee at that organization. Third thing that I've seen is people have never had a real performance conversation. And, I have clients and colleagues all the time that'll say like, well, we give real time feedback. And maybe you do. For a while there, it got wildly popular. We're just not having performance reviews. There were some trendy organizations, some Silicon Valley organizations, probably about 8 to 10 years ago that were like, yeah, death to the performance review. I would say, yeah, murder that thing if you are giving feedback, your people are meeting expectations, pay is on par, we're giving consistent raises with clear expectations on how to get an increase. All of those things are laid out. You're doing great. But I would say 100% of the people that I run across, the organizations that I run across, they're not doing those things. And so the easiest way that I can implement this is to put a performance process into place. And most people aren't having these. Just yesterday, I was talking to a brand new client. So I said, what does your progressive disciplinary process look like in your organization? And they said, oh, we do have a counseling process. And I said, okay, that just sounds like maybe a nicer way to put it because we're maybe afraid to call it discipline or whatever, but that's fine. Performance feedback, if you're giving it, great. Tell me what the process looks like. They walked me through the process and I said, so do we have any performance that's going on right now or lack of performance that we'd like to address? Yes, this, and this. And are we using that process? Yes, we're using it. And so have things been corrected or what's happening? If we have the process and we're having the conversations, what's going on from there? Well, we're maybe not really having the clear conversations, and what we uncovered was they're not happening consistently across departments and they're not clear and they're not documented, and then there is no accountability. And my question was, why? Like, why do we have these processes and we're not actually holding people accountable? There's usually a few different reasons. One is because the process is not clear. 2 is because there's not buy-in. 3, because we never set really, really clear expectations with the employee, so we don't feel like we can hold them accountable. 4 is because as a leader, we're not holding ourselves accountable, so we certainly don't feel confident holding our employees accountable. And then 5 is we're afraid that we're going to lose a person. And it's been hard to recruit. We don't have a process for that. We don't want to go through all of that. And so it's just easier to not say anything. And so I said, like, here's some of the data that I've read. If you look at a $20 an hour employee, there's about a 30% increase on that base pay that we're paying in benefits and what have you. And then if they're ineffective, then it's another 50%. We're not talking about a $20 employee anymore. We're talking about a $30+ an hour employee because they're not effective and we're still paying benefits and giving rewards and pay time off and all of those things. And so if we think it's not worth having the conversation, we are dead wrong. And we're also a weak leader. And that's just the reality of it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it to you, because if you want it to go better, you're going to have to do something different, right? So sign number 3 is the performance conversations are not happening, or you avoid them until you want to fire someone. And that's something else that I see come up. I'll have a client call me and they'll say, our HR director is not performing, so we're wanting to, have an assessment. Okay, have we ever talked to the HR director about that? And when we hired them, did we set clear expectations? Okay, we didn't really know what the HR function was in the first place, so we didn't really know what we were hiring for. Found somebody weak. That's pretty common. Okay, and so did we ever talk to them about what that would look like? Well, we didn't really know what it should look like. We felt like they should have known. Okay. And so have we had those conversations that they need to learn, get a certification, go to a training class, get a mentor, whatever that is? No, we haven't had it. And also, by the way, this person's like a little catty and contributes to gossip culture or whatever that looks like. And okay, have we ever addressed that with them? No, but they should know better because they're the HR person. Facts, I agree with that. But that is a common conversation that I'm having with clients regularly, is that we aren't addressing it and then we're just ready to dispose of the person. And I would say, like, yes, that person should probably be terminated and you likely just need to start fresh. I'm not disagreeing with that, but let's set a person up for success, because in general, most people want to do a good job at their employer, and we have to help them as the employer. It is actually our responsibility, in fact, to help them understand what success looks like. So that's the third thing. First thing is you're the HR department. Second thing is there's no handbook, no policies matching how you operate. Third thing is a lack of performance conversations. Fourth thing, your best people are leaving and you don't know why. You don't have exit interviews. You don't have retention data. You don't have insights around that. You're just not really sure what's going on. You're just losing really good people, or you're making offers to really solid candidates and then you're losing them before they get started, but you're not sure what's going on. And the fifth thing is you hired someone and skipped onboarding because you're too busy, because you're hiring them because you have so much need that you don't have time to onboard them. And so you hired someone with experience because they will be able to figure it out. And I would say that means they never will really understand the job or the culture. If we don't onboard them, that's a real problem. So those are the 5 areas. There are a lot more, but those are the 5 areas that I can tell quickly that your HR is broken and we need to do something about it. So what is it that we can do about it? And I've got a list of some ideas. They are all of these ideas are under $400. So I'm not here to sell you consulting, even though there are plenty of reasons why you should work with an outsourced consultant or hire a seasoned HR pro to address these things in your organization. But I've got 3 things that I'm going to mention that you can do all under $400 to start chipping away at this if you're not quite ready to make the investment, even though I've already pointed out the financial implications and the risk that is associated. So maybe now is really the time that you're going to assess this. But let's talk about some free, cheap, and easy ways that you can jump in right now and address these issues. So I have a DIY HR audit that you can pick up on my website, saltandlightadvisors.com/HR audit. And you're able to go in and assess yourself, your organization. It's just a list of questions and it walks you through the key areas of human resources and asks you some very pointed questions. If you can't answer them, then you probably need some help and support. If you can't answer them and somebody else in your organization can, great, do the exercise with them, set aside an hour on your calendar with that individual to kind of run through, like, how do we do this? How do we do that? Maybe an office manager or, a leader on your team. How are we actually executing these processes? And then it gives you a rating scale of what's at risk and then what should be prioritized. So that's a free resource. If you want to go deeper, you don't know how to do that yourself, I do that with clients all of the time. It's the number one thing that I do is a really robust HR audit where I'll come in, we'll have 2 to 3 meetings, we'll really dive deep, and then I'll present you and your leadership team with the outcomes that I found and then make recommendations based off compliance risk, insurance risk, financial risk, cultural risk, and then help you prioritize what you want to address first, second, third, fourth, and then set out like a 6-month plan. And I'll outline what I could do to help you and then what I think you should be able to tackle internally, because some of these things are not that hard. They just take a little bit of time and maybe a little bit of research. So that's the first thing. You should do an HR audit and really take a look at how your organization is functioning. The second thing is there are things that you can fix yourself and there are things that you should outsource. If you want to figure out what that looks like, I've got an HR Foundations course, and you can just go to saltlightadvisors.com/HR Foundations. I've got a course. It's under $400. The DIY HR audit is free, but the course is under $400. It's got 4 primary modules. The very first one is called HR Baseline and Audit, and it walks you through about an hour's worth of my teaching content. I taught this in HR in a Box to my team that was involved in that, but I go through about an hour's worth of information, and then I give you that mini HR audit and then an employer responsibility checklist, so that way you can really dive in. And then there's 3 more modules after that, going through hiring, going through law and compliance, and then also onboarding. So it's truly the foundation. Any organization of any size should have those bare bones things. And so you can do that self-led course. It's 4 modules. It's more than 12 of the downloadables, tools, and resources that come along with the courses. And you can knock that out. And if you've got an HR manager or receptionist, you don't have to do this as the business owner. You can delegate it to someone else. And then maybe after every one of the modules that they complete, like maybe they do one a week or one every other week, you have them meet with you, walk you through what they're learning, and then what they can implement in your organization. Very low cost and something that you can hop in and do immediately. I've also got my book, The HR Easy Button. It's like $20. It's on my website. If you go to saltlightadvisors.com/the HR Easy Button, or you can just go to Amazon and type in the HR Easy Button book and you can find it, Kindle, paperback, hardback. But that's also a really great resource where it talks about those foundational things and it walks through in extreme detail, because I am extremely detailed and because HR has a lot going on there. So I walk through the hiring, the compliance aspects, the onboarding aspects, and really what your responsibilities are as an employer. And so that is a very in-depth version. So if you want to DIY it, if you want to take a course, some coursework where I'm actually teaching it, or if you want to read it, those are 3 ways that you can address those things. But I would say specifically, if you're the HR department at your organization, but you're also doing sales, doing business development, doing a number of things, like you need to take a look at if that makes sense for you. If you don't have a handbook, you need to get one. And yes, you can go to AI and pick one up right now. I would recommend that you say, like, I am an organization that operates in this state. I operate in this industry. I have about this many employees, and I need, a legally compliant from my state handbook. What questions should you be asking me to make sure that we are setting this up correctly? Because it should ask you a number of questions. So it actually is written the way that your company does. If you just get a template, it's probably not going to be the way you actually do PTO. Like, is it a lump sum bank? Is it accrual based? If somebody quits, do they get that paid out? That needs to be documented in your handbook, because if it's not, then you're required legally in the state of Missouri to pay that out. Every state has different laws around that. So you need to say, ask me the questions about how I operate so this can be set up well. It'll ask you questions. You can annotate it right back in. It'll give you a handbook. At least that's a start. That's a start to make sure that you've got that. The third thing, performance conversations. We need to get annual performance reviews on the books. If you don't have an HR payroll system, you can do this manually in Microsoft Word, PDF, whatever. I recommend you do self-evaluations and then manager evaluations. That makes it easier on the managers, and it's just a cleaner process. So I'd recommend you implement that. If your people are leaving and you don't know why, do some exit interviews. Sometimes people don't want to do those because it's uncomfortable. Like, they're leaving. You're not going to have to see them probably ever again. So get the feedback and see if there's any trend data around that. And then use your HR payroll software to see how many people have left you in the last year. Was there a certain department they were leaving from, a certain manager? Start analyzing the data. and use AI to help you analyze the data. And then last, if you're skipping onboarding, you have to put an onboarding process together. I've done a previous episode on onboarding before. I'll try to link it in the show notes if I can remember, but you want to make sure that you're setting them up for success. Onboarding is not having them read the handbook in silence, having them sign it, completing their tax paperwork, their I-9, and then boom, they're an employee. That is not onboarding. That is paperwork. And so that is the difference between paperwork. Yes, there is paperwork that comes along with HR. Onboarding is setting up in their first week. They're going to meet these key employees. The first day, they're going to have lunch with their team. You're going to have swag sitting on their desk. You're going to have their training outlined, maybe printed off on their desk or, sent to them electronically. And then you're going to explain when on the job training is happening, what training modules they need to take. Like, let's say they've got OSHA courses or whatever they need to take. You've got all of that set up so they know what they're responsible to and for. And you're going to have checkpoints, a 30-day checkpoint with their manager or team lead, asking them how they're integrating, what they feel like they don't understand yet. And then you're going to have a 90-day check-in too. That is a successful onboarding program. It goes a lot deeper than that. And if you get into that HR Foundations course and you purchase those modules, I literally give like multiple downloadables of here's an exact onboarding program that I would follow. And then you just plug and play what's perfect for your organization. Or you can call me and I can help you get that set up. But let's get some onboarding going, because we don't want to just plop someone in the job, even if they're a seasoned pro. They've never worked at your company before. They just don't, there's so much that they don't know, and you need to help them with that. So those are the top areas that I see where HR is broken. Those are some of the kind of rudimentary ways that you can address those and pretty quickly. And if you want somebody to come alongside you with that, I'm happy to connect with you. So if you said yes to 3 or more of those areas, like those broken areas, you're the HR department, you don't have a handbook, you're not doing performance reviews, you're not doing onboarding, people are leaving and you don't know why. 3 or more of those, and like, we got a mess. We got a mess going on, but it's pretty easy to clean up. It's not going to take a ton of time, 3 to 6 months, and you've got an amazing foundation built that your company can sustain with moving forward for years. It's a liability, and we need to address it. So I want to talk again about, like, you can do this internally. There's plenty of ways that you can address this. Ignoring it is not the answer, though. Yes, bringing on an HR pro. Yes, hiring an HR person. I see companies, they'll call me and they'll say, like, I think I just need to hire an HR person. And I'm like, okay, you have 23 employees. So the average based on the data is a 1.03 FTE of an HR person for every 100 employees. So, most HR people are like, dang, that's not very many, but that's really what's needed at that level. You just need one solid person. But if you've got 23 people, if you've got 40 people, do you need a full-time HR pro? It's questionable. If I had an HR person, I would say at that level, I'd say they need to be running payroll as well. And they're probably doing some office management, because you don't have that many people. But if you don't have any of your HR foundation built out, it is going to take them a little hot minute. And if you're not hiring somebody with experience, you need to hire someone green, but then partner with them, a strategic partner, like somebody like my firm or some other mentor, or put them in a course like Society of Human Resource Management, or there's a ton out there, Human Capital Institute. I went through a ton of courses they can go through, but still they need a mentor to walk them through this process, because just reading a book is hard because people are messy. And so once the foundation is built, you can have an entry-level person rinse and repeat these processes for the most part. And you only need to call in for reinforcements at that point if you have a major, got a harassment, a claim going on, or something like a retaliation claim or something like that. Then you need some strategic support, but get that foundation built and you're going to be rocking and rolling. So if this gave you clarity, I'd love it if you would share it with another business owner or leader who's navigating this. If you are a smaller, mid-sized business owner, like, you are flying blind, and it's very isolating. And I get it. I have a small business as well, and it is isolating. And I've got my friend Claude, and I've got my friend ChatGPT, and then I have my husband, and whatever. I've got a professional network, but you're in your business day in and day out, and you need some partnership. And so don't be afraid to reach out to a partner and get some help and support. And I would love it if you'd share this episode, and hopefully this encouraged you or can encourage others to really tackle that HR foundation at the bare bones. Just pick one area. Get in there, do your research, knock it out, and you're going to feel so good about that. And your employees are going to feel good about it. They're going to be like, they're not going to say like, oh, I love how you blah, 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 but they're going to feel like this is a more legit organization that I'm working for. This is professional. And one of the things that I always say about onboarding is if you don't onboard someone with clarity, and it's not a professional process and it's not well thought out and you're not utilizing technology, but then later you're upset with the employee because they're not being professional and they're not being well thought out in how they're performing and they're not utilizing technology. How did we get there? Well, we showed them that that's how we operate. And so we are setting the tone as the employer. It's our responsibility to tackle these items. And then the employee can hold up their end of the deal and fulfill the duties in their job description. And if not, you've got a process to address it. So I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my channel. I put content out like this all of the time. My last several episodes were on my entrepreneurial journey because I get asked about that, but we're going back to HR content in this next season. And so we'll be focusing on these little snippets around HR. And I'm going to dive deep into each of what I think are the 13 foundational areas that we need to be addressing in human resources. So stay tuned for upcoming resources. Don't forget that free DIY, that condensed HR audit that I've got out there. That's saltandlightadvisors.com/HR audit. And when you sign up for that, you'll get added to my email list. I send emails out every single Monday morning. Last week was if you're becoming an applicable large employer, which is over 50 FTE, what do you need to be thinking about? I talk about employee classification and a number of things that you need to be considering inside of your organization. HR to me is not just leadership development. So many people talk about just culture and leadership development, but human resources is the foundation. It's the operating system that your business operates on top of. It is the foundation. And so if it's wobbly, everything feels harder than it should. And I understand that if you are the attorney and you own the business, if you are the physician and you're practicing in the business, if you're an employee and you just feel helpless, all of these things can feel like chaos, but the work is worth it. So don't waste the chaos, friends. Embrace it. I'll see you next time.